This is Beyond Limits.
This is KUTV Primetime News with Irene Mwangi.
Thank you for staying tuned. Now it is time for our discussion. We are joined by Elias Mutuma, who is an advocate and also a governance expert who is joining us live via Zoom. Thank you very much, Mr. Elias Mutuma, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Irene. I appreciate so much. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about the issue of citizen participation when it comes to the process of BBI. But first, I want us to start off from the provision of public participation in the Constitution. Has there been a clear outline on the threshold of public participation in the 2010 Constitution?
Thank you very much for the question. Number one, you must realize that at the moment we do not have a referendum law, and that is the law that would have governed county assemblies in the matter of public participation, because after the 2010 Constitution came into place, we have not had any form of amendment to the same. So we are kind of in a gray area whereby we do not know how to go about the issue of public participation. What is governing the county assemblies now are just the standing orders, which vary from county to county. And you'll find that public participation in one county, the way it is conducted, is not the same way it is conducted in another county. So I would say that there's a lacuna, but when you look at Article 10 of the Constitution, it envisages a situation whereby you have a public participation process that is meaningful, that is adequate, and that brings about result. And what do I mean? I mean that you must involve the members of the public actively by number one, providing copies of the Constitution Amendment Bill in advance for them to study. Those members of public must be given an opportunity to appear before the specific committees that is in charge with legislation in the county. Then they'll give their views, and those views have to be put into consideration, because that is where we can see a meaningful public participation, where the views of the citizens are put into account before the county assembly proceeds to debate. If that is not happening, then there is no public participation.
All right. Now, looking into the 2010 Constitution and how the process was before the promulgation of the Constitution, it was a long participatory process. And now we are having the Constitutional Amendment Bill of 2020 trying to change that particular document. But what you're talking about, it being meaningful, according to Article 10 of the Constitution, is not what we are seeing on ground. Since the process of BBI started, it was all about the task force, then came it being changed to a steering committee, to the process of Kenya signing, and now it is in the county assemblies. But now we are not seeing much of the participatory. Do you think the process has failed entirety in terms of citizen participation?
I think I lost you for a moment, Irene. I did not get the last part of your question.
I was saying, let me start from...
If you kindly repeat what you said at the...
All right, let me repeat the question.
There was poor network or something.
All right. Now, when you look into the process of the passage of the 2010 Constitution, it was a long participatory process. But now, the Constitutional Amendment Bill of 2020 seeks to change the 2010 Constitution, but the issue of citizen participation has been put into question. When you look into the process of BBI, since the formation of the task force, are you seeing public participation, or has the process failed as compared to the way we had the process of the 2010 Constitution?
Let me not say much about that, because if as you're already aware, we have several court cases, around 7 of them, that are challenging the manner in which the Constitution is being changed. But just to answer your question, and for the benefit of the viewers, I would say that when you look at public participation, it ought to have been conducted right from the very beginning. What do I mean? I mean that when we started the process of engaging citizens through collection of views, they ought to have known that they were actually giving views that were meant to end up in a constitutional amendment process. Remember when BBI was first established through the handshake, most people did not actually know that we were supposed to have an amendment at the end of it all.
Yeah.
BBI was brought to us, and we were told that it was about, inclusivity and bringing about unity in the country. So then, members who even presented their views before the BBI task force, did they know that they were giving views that would end up in a constitutional change, or they thought they were giving views for the purposes of inclusivity, peace, and tranquility of the country? So later we see that BBI has made recommendations to amend the constitution, and that process has been, in one way or the other, because we have not seen citizens being involved actively.
Yeah.
So we are seeing a lot of rush, and I would expect that at the end of it all, even after we go through the referendum, if we will ever get there, questions will be raised as to how we ended up changing the constitution without involving members of the public actively.
All right, now that is a perspective you're putting right there concerning the issue of Kenyans not being involved, which is the case. When you're looking into the county assemblies and parliament, we have had President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga say the document will not be changed even when it is presented in the county assemblies. And the question has been whether what they are saying, what these two leaders are saying, is really constitutional, given that the county assemblies and parliament have a right to change the document or amend the document, given that it is a bill. Do you perhaps think that these two leaders have infiltrated into the process a little bit too much?
I think for any legislative process to be valid, you must give legislators the right to look at the document, to recommend, to alter certain provisions that they feel are favorable or are not favorable, depending on the circumstances, and to accommodate the views of the public. So when you present a bill to county assemblies, and we know that county assemblies, their main role is legislative role, which is to enact laws, and you tell them you either approve or reject, then are you somehow not taking away their role? Because you're telling them your hands are tied. Then what are they doing? Why did that bill even have to go through the county assemblies? And when you look at Article 257, I think Sub-Article 6, it talks about the bill being presented to the county assemblies for consideration. So what does the word consideration mean then, if it does not include them putting in their views or accommodating the views of the public? Another question then would be, why then are we even inviting the public to sort of look at the document if they have no right to alter certain sections in the proposed bill? So I would say that it would be very wrong for the promoters of BBI to just tell us that this is a document that is good for you, do not add a comma, do not add a full stop. Then it beats the logic of taking the bill through county assemblies and taking the bill through the legislative process, because that legislative process is meant to legislate, to enact, and to accommodate views of the public.
All right, Mr. Mutuma, can we then say that our county assemblies or the legislative bodies are sort of failing, given that now the overdrive we're seeing in county assemblies is because they've been promised they will be given a car grant, something that Honorable Mother Karua has been out to criticize. Can we then say that these houses, the national houses, that is the parliament, and the county assemblies are not really representing Kenyans as required by Article 1 of the Constitution?
Without a doubt, yes. Because number one, these MCAs are servants of the people. They have been elected to represent the interest of the people who gave them those positions. So when they put their interest first by making demands that are very irrelevant and that are self-centered, like asking for car grants, then it means that they have no interest of the Mwananchi at heart. And that would actually amount to bribery, because why would you ask for a car grant to do that which you're elected to do in the first place?
Sure.
I think that's very unfair, and without a doubt, I would say that they have failed in their legislative duties. We should be seeing them engaging their electorate very vigorously, asking them, what is your views on this BBI? They would, and remember, the Constitution has given a period of 3 months.
Yeah.
So why would a bill be introduced to the House, and within a week or 2 days, or even a week or 2-3 weeks, you have already passed it?
Yeah.
Is that time enough for you to engage the public, get their views, and accommodate them? And if you have not done that, haven't you then, reneged on your legislative duty? I would say yes.
All right. Now let's look into the issue of the BBI copies, which is something that will usher or precipitate public participation. Now, we saw Tanga Tanga movement, or Deputy President William Ruto allies, since the onset of the process, claiming that the BBI copies should be presented to the common Mwananchi. Up until now, the copies are not there. And therefore, the question has been whether during this process of referendum or during this process of constitutional change, the copies should have been availed to the common Mwananchi, so that they can be able to see what the issue of the Constitutional Amendment Bill of 2020 is all about. Are we a little bit too late when it comes to presenting the BBI copies to the common Mwananchi?
Irene, I would say it goes without saying, because if you have nothing to hide, why don't you give members of the public these documents to go through, to study, to internalize, to understand it, and be able to make an informed decision on it? Remember, when we came up with the 2010 Constitution, it was a process that was done not one day, not in a year, not in 2 years. It was a journey that we walked through. We had the first draft, we had the Kilifi draft, we had the Naivasha draft, we had the Wako draft, we had the Bomas draft. We kept on improving this document. We had a lot of consensus. And then when you looked at the percentage that voted to endorse the 2010 Constitution, it was a huge margin.
Yeah.
So why don't we have this BBI document being circulated for the benefit of the Mwananchi? Myself, as a lawyer, I have not even come across the BBI document. I have talked to many of my colleagues. They have not seen that document. I have talked to members of the public. They have not seen that document. So what are we voting? What are we approving if we do not even know the contents of that bill? Remember, I say the devil is in the detail, in anything. So maybe what we are being told is different even from what is being presented.
Yeah.
Remember, Irene, the document that was first unveiled by the steering committee at Bomas was changed. We do not know who changed it. We do not know what was inserted or what was removed. We now have a bill that has been presented to the county assemblies. We do not know whether it's the same document that was unveiled at Bomas. We do not know whether it was a second document that was unveiled after remarks by the deputy president and his team. We do not know whether it's a different document altogether. And that is a cause for alarm for every Kenyan, because we should be given an opportunity to understand this document. If it is a proper document, if it's a public document, a document that is meant to govern us and have impact on our lives, we should be given that document for us to internalize and understand.
All right. Now, given that the referendum might be conducted sometime this year, the question has been whether the referendum should be a question of yes or no, or multiple question. Some have argued it should be multiple question because of what is in the BBI report, given that the citizen participation is almost not there, or it has not really met the threshold as required, given the precedence that was set by the 2010 Constitution. Do you think it will be subjected to a multiple vote question? Multiple choice?
Well, the proponents of BBI do not seem to be very keen on having a multiple issue referendum. But when you look at the Elections Act, when you look at the Constitution itself at Article 257, it envisages a situation whereby the electorate is given an opportunity to choose between Proposal A and Proposal B, so that we do not have to waste 15 billion in a referendum, and for people to reject certain good proposals in the document on account of bad ones. Let us be given an opportunity for us to reject those that we feel are not good for us, and then we approve those that we feel are good for us. That way, it will be a win-win situation. Remember, we are spending a lot of money, almost 15 billion on this project. Why would we go through that process only for us to reject the document on account of one or two issues? The Constitution and the Election Act provides for multiple issue referendum. Why can't we go for it? So I think we should.
All right. Now, given that the political elites have taken over the BBI process or the constitutional change process, some have termed that there might be voter apathy in terms of voting for the change of the constitution. Now, from where you sit, are we seeing a situation like this, given that Kenyans have not really owned up to the process? We are only seeing key leaders now taking a stand on the matter, which as Kenyans, I would say we are sort of blinded on what is going on.
The truth of the matter is that the common mwananchi does not understand what BBI is all about. The common mwananchi has not been given that opportunity to understand why we're even going for a referendum in the first place. But the promoters seem to be very keen on persuading leaders and on the belief that these leaders are going then to persuade their constituencies. But I think they might be shocked, because at the end of the day, the common mwananchi might want to ask himself or herself, what am I voting? What am I getting myself into? Remember, even the 2010 Constitution itself, we took a bit of some time to really understand what we voted for. And I'm afraid that because Wanjiko has been through that and he has seen the cost implication that came with the 2010 Constitution. So if that notion then clicks into his mind again, or a mind again, they would be very careful not to get themselves into something they do not fully understand. So if then BBI has to sail through, I believe it is incumbent upon the promoters to really engage the public, to get away from the leaders and engage Wanjiko herself. Let her understand why we have to go for a referendum. Let her understand why this document is important for her. Let her see the benefits in that document. That way, the document might sail through. But without that, I sense a lot of rejection on account that people have not understood what it is all about.
All right, Mr. Mutuma, finally, as we finalized, the referendum bill of 2020 has not yet been passed. The 2010 Constitution, Article 10 of the Constitution, has not really provided the threshold of what should be termed as a paramount citizen participation. Therefore, what are some of the innovative ways that can be done to make this process, to make the common mwananchi being involved in this particular process as we finalize this discussion?
The ideal thing would have been not to rush through the process. The ideal thing would have been for Parliament to perform its legislative duty and come up with a referendum bill and enact it into a law. And that way, we would borrow from other countries that have gone through a referendum process successfully. We would borrow from Britain. They went through Brexit. We would borrow from other countries that have successfully changed their constitution. But in all those circumstances, we had an enabling act that would give guidelines on how to conduct public participation. What would be the threshold? Is it a simple majority? Is it a 50+1? Do we put into account the number of voter turnout? I mean, those are things that ought to be included in the guidelines that can only be availed if we enact a referendum law. So in my view, I would say the ideal situation would be to put on hold this process until we have the legal framework to undertake such a serious process as an amendment of the Constitution, because it's not every day that we amend our Constitution. There are serious ramifications for amending a Constitution. Why should we hurry and go through it that quickly without even a legal framework? Why, as in Parliament, risen to the occasion, and enacted that law, because it is their duty. That's why we elected them. Why would they send us to a referendum without a referendum law? It's suicidal, I would say that.
All right, thank you so much for that particular perspective concerning the issue of citizen participation when it comes to BBI, Mr. Elias Mutuma.
Thank you so much, Irene.
All right, that has been Mr. Elias Mutuma. He is an advocate and also a governance expert, talking to us concerning the issue of BBI and the issue of citizen participation, terming it suicidal that we don't have a legal framework, yet the journey of referendum has already commenced. We are taking a short break. We'll be back with more. To stay tuned.